The CSS font family rule allows the developers to change the font of selected elements. It contains a specific list of font family names and generic family names for the selected element. Let me first of all explain what is the difference between font family and generic family. The font family holds several font names, while the generic family contains limited fonts which are used as fallback mechanism if the browser does not support the font name given to font family. To check this practically, I will give a paragraph inside the body. In the styles, I will first style the document page, that is the body, giving the background, font size and color. I'll give the paragraph selector next, in which let me say font dash family. You can see the list of various font families it displays. It's going to show the list of fonts which are available on your device. I can select any of the font families from this and that will be applied to the paragraph. Let me select this one and you can see the font of the paragraph is changed. Remember that the font which is being selected is not a single font but a family, and always it is the first font that is being applied to the selected element. The font family always specifies the list of fonts from highest to lowest, and every font is separated by a comma. If the browser fails to recognize the first font, it will move on to the second font and so on. So this is how the syntax of font family looks like. You give the selector and then you define the property, that is the font family. Also, when using the font family, you should always include at least one generic family name, like here you can see sans serif. Even if I change the font family, you can see at the end serif is given. Now what does generic family mean? They are prioritized list of fonts which are available locally in every device. So if any of the fonts from the font family are not recognized by the browser, then the browser will move to the generic font family. One more important point is that the generic font family is always written without giving any quotation marks. You can give double quotes or single quotes to write any non-generic font, but for the generic font family, you do not specify any quotation, as they work as a fallback mechanism. So it is very important to specify a generic family in every font stack you define. If you don't specify a generic family, the browser will set it to default, which is whatever the default font is used by the user's system. Also, there will be font names which contain spaces between them, like the one which I have currently given. For the fonts which have spaces between their names, you always write them in single or double quotes. So this was a detailed discussion about the font family rule. Now let's talk about questions. So what will happen if you specify a generic font in the beginning of the font stack? Well, there is nothing wrong with it. If you want to give priority to the generic font, then you can set it at the beginning of the font stack. But then the rest of the font family will be meaningless because browsers anyhow can read the generic font name. So it is a good practice to give the generic font name at the end of every font stack. The font face CSS rule allows you to load custom fonts on a web page. When we add the CSS rule inside the style sheet, it will instruct the browser to download the font from where it is hosted and then displays it as specified. In a shorter way, the font face rule will allow you to not only use the external fonts to your web page but also allow you to give your own font name. Now before diving into this lecture, let me highlight few points regarding what this at is. In CSS, there are some statements which tell or instruct the CSS how to behave. These statements are referred to as CSS at rules. There are several at rules, each having their own uniqueness in handling different conditional situations. We will see them as and when required. Alright, getting back to font face rule, let's try some practical implementation. I am defining a paragraph here. Let me give p tag and inside some content. Let me also give a heading at font face. Let's move to the CSS part. Now before giving any styling, I'll first define at font face rule. Not that it's going to create any errors, but generally in the front end development, when we want to use the at font face rule, we define it first before any styling as a part of standard practice. So I will give the font face rule and press enter. And you can see that it gives the font family and source, that is the URL properties by default. This is how the syntax looks. In the font family, we can give any custom name. For example, I give the name heading font, and in the SRC, we have to give the path of the font which we have downloaded. So if I open my project folder, you can see I have the fonts folder where I have downloaded few fonts. Now these fonts are not installed in the system, nor they would get displayed in the font family property. Alright, so back to the code window, I'll give the path. I'll say assets / fonts / and you can see it shows the path. I'll press enter and the downloaded fonts are displayed. Let me select this one for heading. Similarly, I'll give another font face rule for the paragraph. I'll give the font family name as paragraph font and I'll give the path for the font. So the fonts are set. Now I will give styling to the body. I'll say background color, font size and color. Next I'll style H1, giving the font family as heading font, which we have described in the font face rule. Text align to center. Font size I'll slightly increase. And lastly, the color. And for the paragraph, I'll just define the font family property. I'll say paragraph font. Now if we look at the output, you can see the fonts which we have given in the font face rule are applied according to the heading and the paragraph. So this rule is very helpful when you want to give external fonts to the elements. There can be certain situations where you want certain type of font format in your web page. In that case, you can specify the font format inside the format function. Like here you can see at the end of the font path, the format is specified. These are the different font formats available. They were created as per the older to newer browser compatibility. Nowadays, the web open font format, that is WOFF and WOFF2 are widely used as they are wrapper for the older font formats like OpenType and TrueType font formats. So now let's talk about relative questions. The question is, how will you specify the TrueType, the embedded OpenType and web open font format in the font face rule? For TrueType, you will give the TrueType in the format function. For EOT, that is the embedded OpenType, you will give embedded-OpenType in the format function. And for the web open fonts, you will give the WOFF or WOFF2 in the format function. The CSS font weight property is used for making the font thick or bold. The font weight property accepts either a keyword value or numeric value. Let's check this practically. Inside the body, I will define a paragraph. Now inside style, I'll first give the background color and font size 1.2 em, color and text align property to center. Next, the paragraph, I'll give font size and the font weight property, giving the keyword bold, and you can see how it makes the paragraph bold. When the bold keyword is given to the font weight, that means it is equivalent to the value 700. So if I give 700 instead of bold, there will be no change in the thickness of the font, which you can see. If I give normal in font weight, then this is the default thickness of every element when the browser loads, even if I comment the property. You can see there is no change in the paragraph's thickness. The normal keyword is equivalent to the value 400. So any value greater than 400 will add weight to your fonts, and values less than 400 decreases the font weight. The font weight also depends on the font family which you use. If I give lighter to the font weight, then you can see there is no change in the paragraph, because whatever default font family is assigned to the page, it does not allow any decrease in weight from this point unless I change the font family. Let's change the font family. I'll give this one as font family, and you can see as soon as the font family changes, the font weight decreases to lighter, which is equivalent to value 100. So if a font has a bold 700 or normal 400 or even lighter, that is 100 version as part of the font family, the browser will use that, and if those are not available, the browser will mimic its own bold, normal or lighter version of the font. Let's talk about the questions. The question is, in which case the font weight will fail to work? As we just saw, the working of the font weight depends on which font family has been assigned. If the font which you are using does not have those weights in existence, then the browser is very likely to round the numbers to the closest weight it can find for that font, and that leads to failure of the given font weight. The CSS line height property is very useful when you want to set the height of the line box, that is the distance between the lines of text. So if you want to give some amount of space above or below the line elements, the line height property will get the job done. Let me show you how. I will start by defining an h1 in the body. I'll say line height property. Next, I will give a paragraph, and let's give the address as a footer. So I will define the footer tag first, and inside I'll give the address. Now let's style the page. I'll give background color and font family to the body. Next, I'll style the heading. I'll give color and will align the heading to center. Let me give font size as well. Now for the paragraph, I will give line height as 1.7, and you can see each line of paragraph leaves some space. The line height property can accept keyword values like normal and none, as well as the number, length or percentage values. So if I give 35 pixels instead of 1.7, you can see how the paragraph adjusts the line height accordingly. Further, if I give a percentage value, let's say 95%, you can see it reduces the space between the lines. The line height also depends upon the size of the font. So if I give font size of about 1.2 em, then you can notice the change in the line height. How does this work? Well, if you specify the line height property along with the font size, the line height value will get multiplied with the font size value. After that, the browser computes the result and sets the line height accordingly. The recommended method to give the line height is by using the number value only, which is also known as unitless line height. Giving the unitless line height value is recommended because sometimes if there is a length or percentage value assigned to line height, it is possible that the browsers leave some extra spaces between the lines after computing the line height. But if I give line height to, let's say, inside address, I set the line height to 1.6 and font size to 20 pixels. Let me also change the color. Now the font size gets multiplied with the line height, that is 20 into 1.6, which is equivalent to 32 pixels. So the browser will set the line height to 32 pixels. Let's talk about relative questions. The first question is, why is line height important? It's important because it increases the readability of the text. But apart from readability, giving proper line height is also necessary. If the line spacing is too large, there can be too much white space and the text will look awkward. If the line spacing is too small, all the letters will appear as if they are squished together. The next question is, why is it ideal to give the unitless value to the line height? As I discussed, giving the unitless line height value is recommended because sometimes if there is a length or percentage value assigned to line height, it is possible that the browsers leave some extra spaces between the lines after computing the line height. The CSS font style property is very useful when you want to give some additional styles. It has three possible values, that is italic, oblique and normal. So let's see a few practical examples. Inside body, I want to define two paragraphs. I will give a paragraph tag with a class attribute, giving another paragraph tag and giving a class name here as well. Alright, now for the styling, I'll start with body. I'll give background color, font family, color and font size. I want to give font style as oblique to paragraph 1, so I will select the paragraph using the class selector. I'll say dot my paragraph 1 and setting the font style to oblique and also giving the color property. Similarly, for selecting the second paragraph, I'll use the class selector and will set font style to italic and color to deep sky blue. Usually the italic fonts are more cursive, that is, they are less slant compared to oblique font style, whereas the oblique font style is more sloped than the rest of the font style. Sometimes it is hard to identify the difference between an italic style and an oblique style, because most of the time they are specified on the regular font. But if you give the font which is embedded with an italic style, then the difference can be seen. Italic is a special version of the font, whereas the oblique version is just the regular version that is a bit inclined. And last is just the normal. So if I give normal here, you can see how the style looks. The CSS text transform property is used for controlling the text case, that is upper or lower case, and capitalization of the text. The text transform property provides the following values. First is the lower case, which will convert all the letters or characters to lowercase. Second is the uppercase, which converts to uppercase, and third is the capitalize, which will convert only the first letter of every word to uppercase. Rest of the characters remain unchanged, that is, will stay in their original state. Let's check them practically. I'll define a heading and a paragraph inside the body. I'll say h1, giving the heading as text transform property and a paragraph. Next, I'll apply the style to body with the background, font family, color and font size. Adding styles to h1 now, I'll give color and text transform property to capitalize. And now you can see every first letter of the heading is in uppercase. Now let's check both the values on paragraph, that is uppercase and lowercase, one by one. I will give the value lowercase first, and you can see the paragraph is now converted to lowercase. I'll change the value to uppercase and the paragraph is converted to uppercase. If I set it to none, it will bring the paragraph to its default state, which is anyway not needed. Now if I give the text transform property uppercase or lowercase with none, then the none value gets overridden, as you can see. One more point to remember is that the capitalize will not change the letters coming after the numbers. Let me create a span tag, and inside I'll give the date like this. Now if I give capitalize to the span, you can see the letter T in the TH is not in uppercase, as the letter is coming after a numeric value, that is 5. If I add only letter before 5, you can see it is getting converted to uppercase. So capitalize will not affect the letters which are coming after a numeric value. Let's talk about a question. So how can you change the case using CSS? It's basically using the text transform property. You can convert the text into upper, lower or capitalized cases. The CSS font variant property allows you to change the targeted text to small caps. In a small caps font, all lowercase letters are converted to uppercase letters. However, the converted uppercase letters appear in a smaller font size than the original uppercase letters in the text. Let's see this practically. I'll give a paragraph inside the body and giving some formatting to the body also. Now applying the font variant property to the paragraph, I'll say small caps, and you can see how the small caps text looks. They are all in uppercase but with a smaller font size. This property is basically used on the heading, subheading or on the elements which hold meaningful content. Another property derived from the font variant property is font variant caps. Now this property offers few different variants to control the capital letters. So if I just go ahead and give the font variant caps, you can see the list of values which can be given. I'll select all small caps. It converted the uppercase letter to small capital letter. Let me try the unicase here, and it's a mixture of upper and lowercase letters, as you can see in the output. It displays both the small capital as well as the lowercase letters. Next is the titling caps. This value is a variant of uppercase designed specially for headings and titles. But if the font which you use for titles doesn't support this feature, then the property has no visible effect. So this is what the font variant property is. Before CSS3, it only allowed two possible values, that is normal and small caps. But as it got extended in CSS3, it offered more variants for the text. The CSS text decoration property allows you to add and decorate the lines, underlines, overlines, line through, or a combination of lines on a selected text. There were individual decoration properties used for decorating the text, be it a line, color, style, or size decoration. But now there is a shorthand available for declaring all these properties in a single line, and that is the text decoration property. Let's check some practical examples. I will define a paragraph inside the body. I'll give text here saying this is the example of text decoration property. Let me give some basic styling to the body. I'll select the paragraph tag by using the element selector. First, let's bring this text to the middle of the page. I'll give margin top to 10 em. Now I'll give text decoration, and you can see the list of values it displays. Let me select underline, space, dotted, space, color, space, and finally the size, that is the thickness. So this is how the text decoration is defined. This is the correct approach of using the text decoration shorthand property. We first give the text decoration line. We separate the next value by giving a space, then text decoration style. then text decoration color, and finally the thickness. Now, talking about values, if I change this to overline instead of underline, you can see the dotted line goes above the text, that is over the text. Next, if I change this line to line through, the line style to dashed, you can see now the line is on the text. You can also define multiple lines for any element, like if I give overline and underline, you can see the result, but you cannot define more than one line style or color. There is one additional property which you can give, particularly when the text decoration contains an underline, and that property is text underline offset. Now this property sets some offset distance, some space between the text and the underline. So if I want to give some space here between the underline and text, I'll say text underline offset and we'll set it to 10 pixels. And you can see it added some space between underline and the text. So this is how the property works. Remember, text underline offset is not part of the text decoration shorthand. While an element can have multiple text decoration lines, text underline offset only impacts the underlining and not the other decorations like overline or line through. And finally, if you do not want any decorations, you can simply give none. By giving none, all the existing decorations will be removed from the element, even the element which comes with predefined decorations such as an anchor tag coming with an underline. Let me give an example of anchor tag. I'll give a reference and name here. All the anchor tags are by default shown with an underline as they represent a hyperlink. Say if you want to remove this underline, which generally happens when we create menu items, then you can simply set the text decoration value to none, and you can see the underline gets removed. So let's talk about a question or a practical implication of this text decoration property. Explain a practical usage of text decoration property, if that's the question. Or I may ask you that how will you remove the underline from an anchor tag? So most of the time you see that text decoration property is used when there are sites containing menu-like design. Generally, to create a menu, you have to use the anchor tag, but when you put anchor tag, it comes with an underline. To remove that, you can practically implement this. Let me show you an example quickly. I'll create a div containing 3 anchor tags: home, about, and contact. Let me bring these links to the middle of the page. I'm giving text align, font family, font size, and margin to the div. Then for the anchors, I'll change the color, giving some padding, let's say about 12 pixels, and the text decoration property, I'll set it to none. So this is how the menus are created. Usually we don't keep the underline for the anchors while creating the menu, so we remove them with the help of text decoration property. If you further wish to design it, you can add simple hover effect. I'll set the hover effect by giving background color, border radius, and transition of about 0.8 seconds, and there we have our menu. CSS allows us to give the alignment to the text by using the text align property. It sets the horizontal alignment for the content given inside the inline block element or table cell. This property accepts one of the 6 values, that is left, right, center, start, end, and justify. Left is the default value. Content aligns along the left side. Start is the same as left, but the text direction will be from left to right. Right aligns the content along the right side, and end is same as right, but the text is from right to left. Center will bring the content to the center, and justify will actually stretch the text until it fills the width of the web page or container, as well as it also makes sure that each line has equal width. So let's see this practically. I'll define 3 paragraphs inside the body, not to mention that giving some body formatting. Next, I'll give the text align property to paragraph. It is already left aligned, which is the default alignment for all the elements. Let me make it right aligned. And you can see all the letters get aligned to the right. Instead of right, if I change it to end, you can see there is no change in the alignment. That is, it still remains right aligned, but the text direction is from right to left. Let me give center align. You can see the moment I try to change the value, it gets back to its default state. That is the left alignment, because that's the browser's tendency to set every element to left as default if no alignment is found, as it is easier for users to read or find the start of the sentence. And you can see the letters are center aligned. Now if I set it to justify, it stretches the text to match the width of the web page. Let's talk about a question. Explain the difference between end versus right alignment and left versus start alignment. Basically, the end alignment and the right alignment are the same. They both will align the content to its right side, but the end is used alongside the direction property to adjust the direction as well as the alignment. But the right will keep your text to the right side no matter what direction is given. Similarly, the left align and start align will align the content to the left side, but the only difference is that the start align will align the content to the left if the flow of the text, that is the direction, is left to right. But if the direction is from right to left, then start will align to the right. The CSS text indent property allows you to add some horizontal space before the beginning of the first line. The horizontal space is applied with respect to the starting edge of the line, that is left or right. The text indent property accepts the values in length format or in percentage format. Also for the length, it accepts negative length values. So let's see how to use this property. I'll define 3 paragraphs inside the body. And let me give some basic styling to the body with the padding. Now let's indent these paragraphs. I'll give text indent up to 5 EM. And you can see the indentation is applied to the first line of all the paragraphs. Now if I change it to 50%, you can see it adds more space before the starting of the paragraph. If you want to give indentation only to the second and third paragraphs, you can use the adjacent selector and you have the required result. Let's try giving negative values. I'll give minus 15 pixels. And you can see the indentation is more towards the left side. Basically, text indentation is used to display the paragraph or a line properly on the web page. Generally, the text indent property adds the indentation on the left side. But if you want to indent the text from the right side, you can always change the direction of the line by specifying the direction property. I'll give the direction to RTL, that is, the direction will go from right to left, and text indent to 3 EM. Now you see the indentation is applied from the right side. So this was about the text indent property. It is used for adding some more indentation, some space, generally before the beginning of the line. Now let's talk about a question. So how to apply right indentation? To give the right indentation, you will have to change the flow of text direction from left to right, as by default the direction is from the left. So by using the direction property, you can change the direction of the text to right, and then you can give the indentation. The CSS color property sets the color, that is the foreground color value of an element's text or text decorations. Color property is very useful and an important part of design and development when creating websites. With the use of color property inside your style sheet, you can set color of any element which is available within your HTML document. So for example, let me define a paragraph inside the body and let's try to change the color of the paragraph. But first, let me give styling to the body as usual. Now for applying color to the paragraph, I'll give the color property and will set it to orange. And you can see the paragraph's color is now orange. With CSS, these are 4 possible ways to define or assign colors. The one which we saw is just the color name. Other 3 ways to define or assign colors are by giving either hexadecimal value, the RGB value, or HSL value. We will see each of them in detail in the forthcoming sections. Now let's talk about a question. So what is the use of color property in CSS? Or the same question is, how do you change the foreground color or text color of an element? So it is the color property which helps you to change the text or foreground color of an element.